RWBY, Volume 6, Episode 1, Argus Limited. What happens? We started off with Team Ruby and Ranger fighting some Manticore Grimm until we cut away to Adam reminiscing on some bad life choices. Returning to the heroes, we've gone back in time to listen to Crow recap the previous volume's finale. The kids waste some time trying to be funny, and we get introduced to the Why Are They Even Here committee, Dee and Dudley. Blake says goodbye to her entourage as Ilya stays behind and Sutton heads off to Vacuo. Aboard the train, there seems to be some tension between Blake and Yang, but that gets interrupted with the Grimm attack. Dee gets killed off and Dudley activates some defensive measures for the train, but that's apparently a bad thing and the group retreat inside for a bit. We learn the relic attracts Grimm, and the kids make the plan to hide the train using Ren and Jean semblances. Team RWBY separate themselves from the rest of the train and fight off the Grimm. Unfortunately, a stray fireball sends the train off the rails. The gang survives the crash landing to find they have a new party member with them, Maria. Starting off this volume with a fight is a refreshing change of pace from all the nothing that got done in Volume 5's first episode, though this is a pretty unimpressive encounter. It's basically a glorified character showcase with the implication of combat sprinkled in. I really don't like all the cheesy, gotta make sure everyone gets a chance to talk lines the girls all have either. It just feels real hokey, you know? On a more positive note, these new Grimm are super cool, though it's a little weird that the Manticores and Sphinx have different names when they're just the same thing but differently gendered. But that aside, they look rad and are a fun challenge for the kids to face. No more just a bear running at you shit. These things can fly and shoot fire. It's nice to see the kids facing off against more capable monsters as they themselves become more capable combatants as well. Wow, this is a good example of Jean really needing to get a fucking ranged weapon. He is useless against enemies like this. Why do Ren and Nora need this long-ass wind-up to toss her like 2 feet? We've seen Nora casually scale buildings in a single leap. Don't pretend hopping to a different train car is worth this much effort if you're also gonna make all your characters basically able to fly. I like how Ruby's pedals change depending on if she warp speeds with another character. That's really cool. If you're just gonna give us the scene where Adam kills his companions through audio alone, I'd suggest getting professional voice actors to do it. While these performances aren't horrible, they also aren't very convincing, which pretty negatively affects such a high-intensity scenario. I wouldn't be surprised if the White Fang were comprised of sheep faunus exclusively, seeing as how they switch sides so flippantly. We like Gira. Never mind, Sienna's way cooler. Actually, Adam's where it's at. JK, we're leaving him now. And yeah, it makes sense why they wouldn't want to follow Adam after he tried to blow up his faction, but it's still funny how eagerly they all shift sides in this gang. Remember when Adam cared about more than just Blake left me? Literally, the previous volume had him eagerly climbing the corporate ladder to gain power so he can try to subjugate humans. And now suddenly he doesn't give a fuck about winning a war against the humans, proving the faunus is the dominant species, or making humans serve the faunus. His motivations have suddenly changed to be a meanie for Blake to win against. I'll talk about this more at a later date, but this scene carries no weight now that Adam's entire character has changed. Wow, Crow's letter is boring. It's pretty nice to know what happened after the fight at Haven, but this is dull to listen to on a second viewing. And the totally random visuals of looking at background characters doing nothing important leave a lot to be desired. And since the letter and visuals are so boring, it makes it impossible to ignore all of these small nitpicks. These two are wearing the exact same outfit. And these two are the same guy. And these two guys are the same person, but wearing different clothes. And why do so many of these background characters have gray hair? I wish the whole Ruby turns into a blob to move quick thing looked faster. Doing this in Volume 2 sells the speed really well. The camera shakes. She moves too quick for the camera to keep up with. The speed lines and the fact that the world goes white around her implies that she's moving so quick the background blurs too much to be seen. It comes with a sound effect similar to that of an airplane passing by overhead. But now she just turns into a blob and flies around. It's just a shame that what was once a cool upgrade to her semblance has transformed into a shortcut around having to actually animate her moving fast. Why have a whole scene dedicated to Ruby getting Yang a gift when it literally doesn't matter at all? We spend a weird amount of time on this to not even get to see what she bought. I guess it was that magazine? Ah yes, the Why Are They Even Here committee. Dee and Dudley are really unnecessary. They aren't funny, they don't have cool designs, they barely fight, and when they do it's just shoot bullets. The conflict with the turrets is contrived, no one cares about Dee's death, and Dudley's broken arm didn't matter. These two have no reason to exist at all. Ilya's new outfit is really cute, and I'm sad that she's been jettisoned from the show after getting such a swanky new look. But I'm also a little mad that she got an outfit change, but Sun still didn't.
I still don't feel like I deserve the freedom you and your family granted me.
Yeah, 'cause you don't. I wish they had used this conversation to make it clear Ilya's gonna start working on atoning for her crimes, rather than just use it to slide Ilya's villainy under the rug. Ilya mentions the White Fang being a failure, but we just saw Adam hanging out with the recently deceased members of the organization. Is the White Fang still a thing? With Sienna dead and Adam abandoned, do they have a leader? Are all the violence-driven members of the gang just gonna stop doing that now that Gira's starting over with a new faction? For featuring so heavily in the previous volume, the fate of the White Fang and Faunus in general sure is nebulously unclear now.
Always trying to save the world. More than you realize.
Yeah, Blake's always trying to save the world, like that time she ran off to hide at her parents' house and beat up her only available friend, or like how she was completely separated from the main plot last volume, or like during Volume 5's finale where she prioritized saying biting one-liners to her ex-boyfriend over helping her friends fight off the Council of Evil. But since Blake's always trying to save the world, they definitely won't separate her from the main plot again this volume to have her deal with her own personal issues with her ex again for the finale. Right. How did Ilya not see Sun? And also, why the fuck is Neptune here? Did he just come to make sure Sun didn't run off without them again? Why didn't Sage and Scarlet join?
Is it because they're not voiced by the lead director?
I am glad they're finally having Sun confront the fact that he's constantly abandoning his team and how that's not cool. I think Sun's one of the funnier characters of the show and I'll miss him, but I'm also sort of glad he's leaving. This cast is way too fucking bloated as it is. There's 10 characters in the main group, 11 if you include Ozpin. The cast really needs to get trimmed down, and unfortunately, Sun's right. Blake doesn't need him around anymore now that she's back with her team. I do hope we'll get to see him again, but I don't know. It doesn't feel very likely. Why does Sun turn just to continue facing Blake? Like, he never actually turns?
I don't know, man. It feels like you're just letting her go.
It was never about that, Brainiac. I knew you would look better without the bow. So I hear there's this dance going on this weekend. That sounds pretty lame, but you and me, I'm thinking, not as lame, huh? My hero!
Okay. I wonder if the old woman with the only unique design on the train is gonna be important. I love that Blake jumps in to help Yang with her bag. Finally, someone seems to care that Yang's got a prosthetic arm now. Blake worrying about how well Yang's getting on after her dismemberment is a great way to explore how Blake's grown over these last 2 volumes. Where before she ran from this problem, now she's going out of her way to help. And the fact that Yang tries to tell Blake that she doesn't have to do that speaks volumes on how she's grown too. Getting to see these 2 friends work past the issue that had separated them in the first place is awesome. Or at least, it would have been. We never really get to see these 2 work through this problem. The train crashes and the plot takes over, and then everyone takes a backseat to a statue. I wish we had actually gotten to see Blake and Yang talk about what's been upsetting them so much lately. You don't have to be so ham-fisted with your shipping, guys. Blake and Yang connecting here was already a really nice push towards them growing closer. You don't need Ruby and Weiss to lean in and give us a "they're gonna date" smile like this. Sometimes less is more. No, not the hot one!
What's the plan, Ruby?
Don't let anyone else die!
Wow, that is some egregious trailer bait right there.
What's the plan, Ruby?
Don't let anyone else die!
Oh my gosh! They're letting Crow use his scythe. This is the most of his scythe we've ever seen. Literally, this episode doubles the amount of screen time it's gotten, and it's really fun choreography too. Hooray! Okay, so Crow being upset about the turrets is a really dumb plot point. 1, Oscar should be drawing in the Grimm just as much with the relic on his hip. 2, they're shown to be doing a great job taking out the manticores. And 3, if they really think it's an issue, they could just have the passengers move to the back train cars. That way the Grimm would be drawn away from them, towards the front where the turrets are, while also having them available to shoot them dodown. It's just such a forced-in dilemma that I have to wonder why it's even here. Well, if I had to guess, I'd say it's because of RWBY. Rooster Teeth develops this obsession with having RWBY be the only one anyone ever listens to when characters get upset, and I'll talk about this more when it becomes more egregious down the line. But for this episode, it seems they just wanted a moment where RWBY got to innocently be the voice of reason, and so fabricated an excuse for Crow to quarrel with Dudley. Panicking Oscar is my favorite form of Oscar.
Please just shut off the turrets.
Well, since you're the protagonist, I guess I have to. It's a good thing the trick to changing my mind is looking sad and speaking quietly. Otherwise, how is everyone gonna know you're a pure soul? It's a good thing RWBY's here to come up with this big plan of separating to protect the train. It's not like there's a named strategist in the group for that. Like, there is no reason for Jean to be labeled the strategist when RWBY's been shown to come up with elaborate plans just as much as him. Especially since, because the writers don't know how to make RWBY important to the plot at all, they just give her all the big coming up with a plan moments in place of any sort of development arc. But this is far from the last time we'll be seeing this sort of thing in the volume. How they handled Adam is dumb, and I'll talk about that more when it makes a bigger impact on the plot, but for now I'd like to complain about the fact that it makes no sense for Blake to see him here. She doesn't have PTSD like Yang, so there's no reason for us to think she's suddenly getting weird Adam flashbacks, which implies it's really him over there. But that means he's also like a fucking super ninja or something. He's not in the wide shot and then suddenly appears, but then he's gone again immediately. It's not done well if we're meant to believe he's actually there following her. This is really cool. I like the idea of mixing semblances to achieve more, though I am a little disappointed they never have Jean amplify any of his other teammates throughout the volume. Imagine RWBY so fast that she just teleports, or Yang able to dish out more damage without having to take as much. There's a lot of cool stuff they can do with this, so I hope they explore it more in later volumes. This whole fight is pretty fun, though I wish they'd use the interesting setting more. The choreography is well animated, but also pretty cookie cutter. No you don't. The Sphinx has the tendency to plant itself in one spot and shoot fireballs. We only see it fly to avoid the tunnel. That bitch has been firmly grounded this whole time. If you need to come up with an excuse for your cast to actually work together during a fight, at least come up with one that makes sense. Seeing the girls work together is fun, but Blake and Yang really aren't doing anything. Not only does the Sphinx not need to be held down, but I also find it hard to believe these two teens are doing anything to keep it from getting airborne by applying some pressure to it with just a ribbon. Especially since Weiss could have just started by freezing its wings, and doing that while it was airborne would have caused it to crash land, dealing heavy damage with the possibility of it falling off the train and getting left behind. But whatever, I guess RWBY just really wanted to do her dual spin move with Crow. To be fair, it is a really fun move. It's cool to not only see RWBY and Crow fight together, but also get to see how RWBY's learned most of her moves from him while also differing from him. Good job. Maria's music is really cool. I remember being wary of another important character being introduced for the volume, but I'm glad to say Maria's a fun addition to the way too full cast. And so, that was Argus Limited. It's a pretty fun episode for being mostly unimportant fluff. The shenanigans at the train station are pretty long-winded for never really landing a joke, and the episode wastes 3 minutes on Dudley's turrets, but at least that time was filled with a conflict of some sort, rather than just characters sitting still and talking about lore. The sets and animation are both real pretty, and the girls have gotten some of their color back, which is nice. The fights are nothing special, but they are entertaining, and importantly, the setup during the episode is solidly done. We know there's tension between Blake and Yang. We know Adam is upset about Blake. We know the relic attracts Grimm. We know Ranger is headed for Argus. And then they establish the hero's new situation of oops, we crashed, leading the viewer into that new plot point. It's a bit of a drag in the middle of the episode, especially on a rewatch, but the nice character development, organic world building, upbeat combat, and solid plot progression makes this a strong start to the volume.
How do you get so hot? You know, stress.
There's a crying animal behind you.
Who is it?
I wouldn't be surprised if the White Fang were comprised of get her bag. You know, she's reading a magazine. I also hit my pop filter. That's what that was. Fang were comprised of sheep faunus exclusively, seeing as how they Damn it. I'm a calamity. Look out, Ganon. There's a new calamity in town. It's me! I wouldn't be surprised if the White Fang were comprised of sheep faunus exclusively, seeing as how they switched shides. Sorry, don't use all these. Don't make me look like a fool by putting all of these fuck-ups into the end credit bloopers. Please.